Hello everybody and welcome back. It has been a while. As you can probably tell from the last vlog that I did, but I have recently moved house and I've only just gotten all of this set up. So that's why I have not been here, but I have been reading. And I guess I wanted to sort of preface by sort of stating the elephant in the room. 2020 was like a shit of a year, and in saying that, I did actually read more this year than I have ever read before, which is really lovely, and I have to just sort of be really thankful for that I have a hobby that allows me to stay inside a lot. With all of that in mind, today I want to run you through my top 5 books that I read in 2020. Now this did actually make it a bit harder to narrow down the books that would make my top 5 of this year, which does mean that we also have a bonus category this year of honorable mentions. Yay! So I will start with those and then I'll jump right into the top 5. My honorable mentions are in no particular order. They are just the order from which I picked them up off the ground. And we are starting with Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a contemporary, not young adult story following the son of the President of the United States and the Prince of England, basically how that all navigates. This was a amazing, really fluffy, light-hearted book, and I read it at the exact right time that I needed to. It was a really good palate cleanser, but it was a really beautiful story. Honorable mention, Red, White and Royal Blue. The next honorable mention is actually kind of an honorable mention for a series in general, and that is the Raven Cycle series by Maggie Stiefvater. I picked up the Raven King because I think that this one was like the highest rated that I rated when I read them. And I think that that's because this book kind of just wrapped it all up in a really, really nice way and really answered all the questions that you needed answered. And it was just a really, really nice concluding novel to a series, which I don't actually get all that often. I don't usually like the concluding novels of series. So this was really refreshing, and I wish that I had read this when I first bought it 10 years ago. Because I would have loved it way more back then too. The final honorable mention that I have today is, and I'm like genuinely shocked that this didn't make it into my top 5, but it is The Burning White by Brent Weeks. This is the final novel in the Lightbringer series. If you haven't heard, the first book is The Black Prism. This is a series in which the magic system runs as colors, so people who have the magic, they can control different colors and each color has its own property. But the more that the people use their magic, the less time they have to live because it kind of eats away at their life. And this series follows a young boy named Kip, who is one of these drafters, as they call them. And it follows his story kind of evolving into that role and then also into kind of the saving the world role. So this was a fantastic series and I loved this book. I, at the end of it, actually had to go back and read all of the extra content that came along with it, and I like jumped onto Brent Weeks' website, read the extra chapter there. It was just so, so lovely. I loved this series so much, and although it's long, it's amazing. I did have like the really sad thought at the end of this book that it's like, if I wanted to relive this series again, I would need to go through the several thousand pages of story again, which feels like so much effort, but it's so worth it. And I probably will reread this series at some point in time. But yes, this was a fantastic series. But yes, The Burning White. But this is it. This is where we jump into the top 5. So starting at number 5, we have This Is Going to Hurt. This is actually based on a journal of a guy who went through his residency at medical school and then all through medical school, and it has all these really funny stories of events that happened and sad stories that happened. But honestly, this book was so good. It made me laugh out loud at so many points in time, and I read it within a day. Like, it's not a long book, but I could not put it down. It was amazing. Could not recommend this book highly enough to anyone. Like, I will recommend this book to anyone who wants to read, because I don't think that you need to have a certain interest in any particular area to actually enjoy this book. So yes, this was a phenomenal book, and I will 100% be getting the physical copy of it and then reading it again. Coming in at number 4, which will be no surprise to anyone who has watched my videos this year, and it is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I have been meaning to read this book for so many years. Now, I've always loved the Studio Ghibli movies growing up, and Howl's Moving Castle was one of my favorites because I could always follow the story a bit more than what I could with Spirited Away. That was always the toss up between the two, but the book was so much better and it made me really appreciate and understand the movies so much more. Howl's Moving Castle is a story that follows a girl named Sophie. She has an altercation with a witch who then turns her into an old lady, and she needs to then go and find the witch again to reverse the spell. But on the way she encounters Howl and his moving castle, and the story kind of ensues from there. If you've seen the movie and you love the movie, you will love the book. I loved this book. I, again, would probably recommend this book to anyone who wants to read a book. I mean, unless you're like solidly a non-fiction person, you're probably gonna love this book. So, Howl's Moving Castle. So good. Number 3 is Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. I mean, I feel like it's a shame to not put a Cassandra Clare in my top 5. The Chain of Gold is the new Shadowhunter series that has come out in the Shadowhunter world. It follows the children of the people from the Infernal Devices series, so it's kind of a continuation in that sense and intertwines with all the things. But the main character of this one is Cordelia Carstairs. She is amazing, she is so badass, and I really enjoyed reading from her perspective. Once again, I love all of the characters in this series. I've grown attached to most of the characters in this series, and my heart just keeps getting ripped out by Cassandra Clare every year, over and over again. And I love it. Chances are if you're watching this channel, you read this type of stuff, which means that you know what this book is about and you've probably read this book, so. Chain of Gold. Coming in at number 2, and number 2 is not a book that came out this year, but it's a book that I read this year, and that is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas. Now, at the start of this year, I kind of made a decision to reread the entire Throne of Glass series so that I could finish the series and just put it behind me. I have not a lot of love for books 3, 4, and 5, really. I did listen to these on audiobook rather than actually read them, which is something that I did when I read number 5, but I continued that on to number 6, and I did from 1 to 6. So going back through the series and actually reading it in sequence, once again, like the first book is just so different to what the story actually is that it's genuinely confusing, and I don't know if I like that about this series. But in saying that, I did love this concluding novel. I was using every opportunity possible that I could listen to it. At the end of it, I was sitting on the kitchen floor just sobbing to myself because there's just so much that happens in this book. It's so amazing. There are things that I don't want to talk about because it will spoil many things, but I have a lot of feelings. I have a lot of feelings about this, and the reason that I put it in here is for a very specific reason that if you've read the book you'll know, but generally, like, I probably won't read the series again. I probably won't go back unless I'm a couple of years time and I'm like, oh, I could get a bit of a kick of that again. But I am generally much more likely to pick up Court of Thorns and Roses more so than the Throne of Glass series for a reread. In saying that, this made it at number 2 because the series as a whole, when you listen to it in its entirety, all one after another, it was fantastic. It's such a rich world. There are so many characters that you follow. Everyone really intertwines, and this book is kind of like where everything just sort of clashes together and people who haven't seen each other for ages come back together. Questions are answered. There's so many epic fights that happen. Like, it's a phenomenal book, and I think it was a really nice conclusion to the series. So this is number 2, which brings us to number 1, my favorite book of 2020. And I mean, realistically, like, this book made it as number 1 because it was the book that I stayed up well past my bedtime to finish because I needed to know the story and I needed to experience it all in one sitting, and it is Crescent City by Sarah J Maas. First of all, can we just appreciate how floppy this book is? It makes it so nice to actually read. This is Sarah J Maas's new series. It's more kind of an urban fantasy setting. It follows a girl named Bryce, and she is managing the, I guess, grief and loss of a few of her best friends. And as I said before, when I was reading this book, I genuinely could not put it down. I was sitting in my bedroom, just again sobbing to myself while I read the end of the book. The first half of the book was a bit tricky to get through and it was a bit like trudgy, but once I kind of hit that 2/3 point, I flew. Like, the whole book just disappeared under my hands. Phenomenal story, amazing characters, fantastic character development. The amount of character development that Bryce went through in this book is kind of equal to how much character development I think Feyre goes through in like books 1 through 3. So, and that's like something that I thrive off when I'm reading books. I love some good character development. I'm so excited for the rest of the series. I've got such high hopes for the story. And yeah, this book was my number 1 of this year. So there we go. And that is it. Those are my top 5 books of 2020. It was definitely, as I said before, a crazy year, but we did get some good things come out of it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what your favorite books were this year. I would love to hear. I did actually miss quite a lot of books from this year that I'm trying to get to for next year. So let me know in the comments if there's any that you read this year that you loved, and I would love to maybe check them out and have a chat to you about them. Again, thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!